Hi, everyone. This is another episode of Can We Talk About Your WordPress Projects? But I'm not doing the accent. We're here. Oh, Shanta, I'm not 100% sure how to pronounce your last name. Nathwani?
Exactly.
Got it. Shanta Nathwani is one of our group members. She is going to share with us today how to use a technical web audit as a lead generator. I'm not all that technical, and I probably couldn't do a web audit without some sort of tool or help. So, Shanta, why don't you tell us why you chose that way of going to get leads? What's your background in that made you want to use technical web audits as a way to get customers?
It fell into my lap. First of all, I was getting clients mostly by referral. They didn't seek me out specifically, but it came about when I only had a handful of clients. What it came to was we need to figure out what's wrong with our site. That is generally the way it went. We need to figure out what's wrong with it. The first one I did, I sort of had an idea of what was wrong with it. I went to the proposal. After I started my business and started taking your course and some other things, I started realizing, well, wait a second, there's a smaller piece I can do that takes a lot of time and can still make money at it. I found was that a lot of people were coming to me, or I was getting referred to, because people had problems with the site. Those problems were various things. One of the first ones that gave me the idea of doing a tech audit was coming from a marketing company that was trying to help their client with SEO. They said, we've run through the Google tests and everything else, like, what is it, escapes me, like Lighthouse and things like that. I think it's coming in March, where Google is going to start moving you down the list if your site is slow. So they'd already done that kind of an analysis, but they didn't know why it was slow. They brought me in to say, we need to figure out why this thing is slow.
Do you know all about site speed?
At the time, I didn't really have a lot of knowledge about it. I knew that it could be images, it could be this, it could be that, it could be a number of different things. Part of my learning was, where do we start? I used two tools. One was the HubSpot Google Speed, which gave me a beginning point. Another one we used for testing general speeds, like Page Insights. But how do you know what's causing the problem? What I do now is someone comes to me with a problem. This is what we're finding. Most of the tech audit is generally the same thing. It's a template in a way. I go through the same basic steps. It's not huge, but it's paid. It's a lead.
Do you mind me asking you how much you charge for the technical audit?
The first one I did was $250. And I figured it would take me about 8 hours. It took me a little bit longer because I was learning what I needed to track. The second one I charged $500 and it only took me 8 hours. I don't mind taking a little bit less if I know that I'm probably going to get something out of it. And a couple of hours at that stage of the game wasn't a big deal. Now I can probably do that. And we're actually now building our own tool internally that should be able to go through and do all of this by itself. First client that I had that was referred to me by the company that laid me off, actually, I didn't do that tech audit. I just went in and said, here's what I think we should do. The second client that came to me said, we have this specific problem. It's the Google SEO sort of idea. I ran the tech audit, found out that it was the theme itself. It was one of those themes they bought from an Envato type place that had all the plugins put in there. I said, here's the problem. Your theme itself, even without the plugins turned on, is garbage. If you want to achieve what you need to get rid of this theme. Going through the plugins, and it sort of becomes down to sort of a percentage, right? What is the main cause of that problem? So I'll do that basic setup. Here are your page speeds, here the template, if you will. Every audit will get this, 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 and this. And typically a client has come to me with a specific problem.
Let me stop you for 1 second and ask you something.
Yeah.
So most of these clients are coming to you. You're not going and doing a web audit on some random site in your city, then trying to approach them with that. Nope. I have heard of people doing that. They'll do a tech audit. They'll use a tool, whether it's a homegrown tool or something like My Web Audit. Then they'll send the people an email to say, hey, I've done a web audit on your website and there's some things you really need to know about. Do you want to see it?
Yeah.
They haven't actually done the web audit yet, They know by looking at the site it's got issues. That's one way of getting leads. But
let's put it like this. I would never do anything that I don't think would work myself. I get emails saying, "Oh, we'd love to help you with your SEO."
Oh yeah.
No.
Oh, well,
no,
that's,
go away.
That's just blanket spam. But if there's a bakery down the street, I want to help them so much. I've never approached them. I keep looking at their website going, Lord, have mercy. You know, but they're really popular. So I don't know that they actually need that, you know, because a lot of times when you approach people like that, they're like, we got all the business we need. We don't need to worry about that.
I've talked to a lot of businesses like that, and that's fine. But most of my time over the last few months has been about building the business. It's not necessarily been about getting clients yet. That'll change starting probably tomorrow.
Good that you're using the small sample of your client base, this service that is your unique value proposition that sets you apart from the next guy.
I'm trying to remember the exact term, but there's an accelerator, which is the next step after that. Then there's a lead gen piece. That's what I'm using right now, is that lead gen piece. The part I'm going to do with that is put it on my website and say, okay, here, go ahead and test your own website, see what you come out with, and whether they have to give me their email and all the specifics of it, I haven't figured out yet. But the basics are, if you want us to help you run a full audit or whatever, then okay, here. Now we know what the problems are. This is where I had challenges when I was going through your course initially, is because we do the proposal, the high level, then we do a deep dive. And I'm thinking to myself, but wait a minute, I've just done the deep dive. So this is a beautiful opportunity now that I'm seeing. That's what I was saying, is I was flipping it around and using the tech audit to say, here's your proposal. What I'm doing is, instead, people aren't coming to me saying, oh, I need to redesign my site, or no, that's not my gig. I'm a terrible designer. I told my students as much. I'm terrible at it. Most of the people that were coming to me were referrals who had a problem in the first place. Now, they didn't know why. It was partly my job to figure out what that problem was. So in the case of the SEO client, I figured out it was the theme. One of the reasons why I use this as a paid generation is because we actually take, as part of our process for this, we take a copy of their site. We don't do anything on their site save one thing, and that is either use a backup tool or a migration tool, which does not affect their front end. We essentially just take a copy.
But when you move that copy from one hosting service, which may be crap, to your hosting service, which is probably good, doesn't that have an impact right there?
That's one of our key markers. We do the front end test on their site versus ours to see if there's any sort of change. If there isn't any marked change in numbers or whatever, then it's more than likely not the hosting.
Yeah, that's good. That's a great test. I had never thought about that.
So we do the test there and the test on ours to see what the comparison is. Then on our own system, we start running incremental tests, the theme, the plugins, and whatever else. Depending on what the client has identified as a potential problem, if I haven't found it yet, yes, I will spend a bit of extra time going through in an attempt to find that problem.
So what things do you check? Okay, so it could be the host,
could be the host,
the theme, could be that you don't have image compression, could be SEO, plugins.
Yeah, we don't test a lot for SEO unless they've specifically said that's what we want to know. In the case of the one client I had with SEO, their complaint was not that the SEO was bad, because they were the SEO people. They knew what they were doing. But because it was slow, they knew it would rank lower in Google.
Okay, you check the theme, you check the plugins, you check the image compression, you might check the SEO if that seems it might be a problem. What else do you check?
For this type of audit, unless they've specified something specific, that's pretty much it. So far, what I've found is that in the two paid ones I've done, it is the theme. Because the theme is not what I would call a recognized theme. It's usually from something like Envato. I don't have a heck of a lot of information to go on, except that to know more than likely if you've got a theme from something like Envato, especially if it's not recent, and not only if the theme itself is bloated, or if it's one of those, hey, we've got the page builder built in and this and this and this and this. that is actually causing a lot more problems. Once I've done the tech audit, I am not telling them how to resolve it. That's the key to this.
Oh, yeah. Okay. That's the key. That's all I wanted to know.
That's right. That's right. So in those cases, what we've done is I've usually said we've got to replace the theme. Or I will say, for example, these are my recommendations at the end of that tech audit. Here's the tech audit. Here's what our findings were. Here's our numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And when we're hosting a copy, we're on Amazon S3.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it's pretty fast. So we get those baselines. We basically hand them all those numbers and say, here's what we found. Here's what we're recommending. In one case, I recommended that she hire a WordPress professional. I'm not necessarily saying hire us, but what I'm saying is you need to hire somebody who knows what they're doing, especially in a small business. In her case, it's not like she had somebody on staff that was dealing with her IT stuff. So just hire somebody who knows what they're doing, who can help you do this. This is where the challenge was. I had said part of the recommendations was to redesign the site, because taking it from one theme to another, which was the main part of her problem. If she didn't fix the theme, nothing's going to work, at least as far as I could tell. She absolutely flipped out when I gave her the proposal to say, well, wait a minute, I just went through this a year and a half ago and I paid X number of dollars for this redesign and we wrote the content and this, wait a second. I started realizing the term redesign in many people's minds means we've got to go through all of that again, or we have to do massive amounts of work. So let me be clear. What I'm recommending usually in the type of clients that I'm getting are a rework. That's the term that I've changed it to. The idea is that most of what we're changing is actually in the back end. It's not much of the front end at all. We don't do design. We don't do content. We don't do SEO. If you need those people, let me hand you to somebody who does. But in her case, she had all of that. All we're talking about in this case is the back end. It's a rework. Ultimately, she didn't end up going with it. She found somebody else to do the work for her. But the beauty about that is she actually offered to get on a call with me, knowing that I was starting my business, and gave me feedback on why she decided to go with this other person. So thank you to her.
Was it mostly money?
No.
Really?
I think part of it was, but there was some of it because I was implementing new processes like the monster contract and the proposal at the same time. It became too technical for her.
We have to dumb things down a little bit with language that makes sense to your client.
That's right.
Even though it might not be as precise as the language that you'd like to use to get that technical idea across, they don't understand what you're saying. It's pointless. Or they can freak out because it's just too technical.
I don't want to scare the living daylights out of them. I think implementing the executive summary, if you want to call it that, it's sort of the beginning of the proposal. Then you get into the specifics of we're going to use this plugin or whatever pieces are in the deep dive proposal, or even the high level proposal for that matter. I might implement that on, at very least, the deep dive. It has to be on that deep dive, I think, especially for the clients that I'm working with.
One of the things you really need to come up with is your plugin description document, because that's something you want to hand over to the client with that final website. Here's everything about your website. You don't really need to have much of a discussion with them about those plugins because they don't care.
No. Yes.
They just want to know, is the website going to do what I want it to do?
I think either it's having been in tech so long, partly the fear that you're going to get questioned on the spot by somebody who thinks they know what they're doing or does know what they're doing or has been in IT before, who expects to see that level of specification. If we're installing this, what is the cost of this? How long? And so on and so forth. I am one of these people that feels they need to be that far up front with them, because it is what I would call, by that time they're in. This is what we're talking about, is that they've already accepted the proposal in the deep dive part. We've now gone through the gambit. Here's what we're recommending, and here are the specifics. If you want to go look them up, go look them up. The idea is that at least I've told you exactly what it is I'm going to give you at this point, because we're doing that deep dive discovery.
You have to do these things for what your client wants. If you've
Mm-hmm.
got a highly technical client that expects to see that, you would be remiss if you didn't give them what it is they're expecting to see.
Well, and let me be clear, though, it's not even necessarily that they are tech people. They are people who are used to processes. Like one of the guys is in insurance. That was his former business. So he's expecting a document like this that has every little, even if he doesn't understand what it is, he will want to know, at least know that it's there. Mm-hmm. He may not necessarily know what it is, but at least I've told him everything that he could potentially need to know. If I've written the document well enough and come up with my template, it comes down to sort of the basic extras I might need for that particular client, like a give WP or donation methodology or something like that. Almost every single one of them is going to have a backup plugin, a security plugin, an SEO, whatever. So they're already there anyways.
Right.
Here's my tech stack. Go ahead. I already know the client. Right. By the time I'm getting to that proposal, I'm usually at least somewhat familiar with them from the beginning. I've done 2 tech audits. The one company tried to nitpick the SEO one that I was talking about. Basically said, here's how much it's going to cost me to fix this. I used a Chris Lemma tactic where you give them 3 options and said, here's the bare bones. I will tell you what you need to do on your own, like a statement of work type thing. And here's how much it's going to cost you. And put in the middle what you'd like them to do. This is how much it's going to cost. And here's what you're going to get. The third one was, we're going to become partners in this going forward. Here's how I can help you move forward. Like the guy had a book for sale. What they said was, we want the top one, we can do more or less, but we want you to help with the CSS you've mentioned in this one. So you want me to take out one piece up here and, okay, so that's still the same price. But I don't understand. We took something out. I said, yeah, but it's still going to take me whatever time. And so finally they just left. I said, okay, good luck.
Yeah.
So, and those are the client, and to be very clear, I know that there's been an ongoing thing about this on almost every WordPress group that I belong to. There are some times where you have to take that client. I am fortunate enough that I don't have to right now. If I need to walk away from that client because I'm focusing on my business and I know I've taken a huge amount of time, I eventually have to pull the trigger on this thing.
Sometimes you have to be willing to say, this is not a good fit, especially if they're nickel and diming you. If what you're charging is fair and what you need to make in order to have a business, then you need to stick with it. I've fallen victim to this too, but it's just like when somebody unsubscribes from my email list. I used to get completely bent out of shape about that. Like, why? What did I do? What did I do wrong? Now I'm looking at it more like I only want the people on my list who are interested in what I have to offer and what I have to say. Right. So it's the same sort of thing. Okay. So that was very helpful. I want to make the point that this is a perfect example of taking what I teach and modifying it to meet the way you do business and your client base, because you're basically doing a little bit of the deep dive up front, but you're not telling them all you found out. You're only giving them the high level of what you found out, because if you give them every little detail of what you find out in the high level proposal, that just gives them the ability to take it and get somebody else to do it.
I want to be very clear about this. The tech audit solves a specific problem. It does a general overview of the current snapshot. The deep dive you discuss in your program and the proposal is a look forward.
Gotcha.
Right? That's where you have the discussion. The first tech audit that I did was in that third option. Oh, you have a book. You might want me to help you sell that. Well, now I use the deep dive or the proposal to go, okay, so what are your future plans? The tech audit that I perform does not discuss the future plans. This is a snapshot of your site today. Here's what we found. Here are our recommendations.
But it gives you a window into their business, so you know which questions to ask and you know exactly what to say about, well, it looks like you've got this book for sale and I see this landing page. How's that working for you? It's a great
Yeah.
approach. And,
So yes, it does do part of the deep dive, but it doesn't cover everything, because the whole purpose of a proposal and the deep dive is to go forward. So while your proposal may have at least the knowledge of the tech stuff, you want to understand, is there something that's missing? Is there something, like they have a book or they have donations or whatever those pieces are, to go forward with, and what's not working for them and how to solve that as a human.
Right.
Not necessarily from a tech part.
well, this has been great. Thank you again, Shanta, for sharing this with us. It's very insightful to see the different ways people are taking what I teach and modifying it and tailoring it to your specific niche and what you're doing. So remember, guys, until I see you next time, stay productive, stay strong, and never stop learning. Bye. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Shanta.